Hey now, ladies and gentlemen. Hey now, hey now, hey now, and a hey now. Welcome to hour number 3 of the line, Talk 99.5. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. Shout out to our girl Stacy G over on the YouTube and all of our people. All of our over the line family, not over the line, but the line family and over the line family. By the way, had to make a last minute pull of the plug on the podcast last night. So apologies for that. Sometimes things pop up and we have to, axe a pod here and there, but we'll be back on Thursday. We'll have you a Thursday show. And we'll make it fantastic. It'll be like, oh my gosh, this is like two podcasts worth of fun packed into one. And then everybody will be happy. Noto Roofing bringing you this hour. NotoRoofing.com, my favorite roofing company in the whole wide world. If you hadn't called Noto, what are you doing? You know how much Noto supports the show. You probably don't know how much they support the show. It's actually above and beyond what they do for us. I can't thank them enough. But outside of the support, the work they do is fantastic. It was, I guess, about a year ago. I don't know, maybe a little over a year ago. They had done some work to my roof and got me patched up and fixed up and all that kind of stuff. And it was great, man. It was no hassle at all. They cleaned everything up and they were out of there and had it fixed before I even got home from work. And so I was very grateful. They do great work. I may even get them to come out and inspect my roof again, just to kind of make it a yearly habit. If it's been a year since you had your roof inspected last, why don't you get Noto to come out there and do it? It doesn't cost you anything, and they'll give you a roof tune-up for free as well. You can't beat that. Free stuff all around. So call them up at this number, 205-848-2299. It's 205-848-2299, online, notoroofing.com. Before I get to the phones, I want to hit a couple of other things from the hearing today, and I would be amiss if I didn't bring up our good buddy on the Democrat side of the aisle, one John Fetterman.
He's chasing black people with shotguns. That's John Fetterman. Who in the hell told this guy to run? That's John Fetterman. Does that lump on his neck breathe on its own? That's John Fetterman. If it grows anymore, it will be his clone. That's two John Fettermans. Can't have two Fettermans. Say no to Fetterman.
Fetterman. Now, when we made that song, we were against John Fetterman, but we're not against him that much
We
anymore.
love him now.
We do. We love him. And he actually, he admitted in front of Fauci that he regrets believing Fauci's lies, saying that conservatives were actually right. He even showed up in a suit. He was wearing a suit, and he, in his own way, his words are kind of, all over the place. It's like somebody took a speech, a pre-prepared speech, and they took each word and put it on a little piece of paper and put it in a hat and shook it all around, and then started drawing out one at a time, and then read it that way. But you kind of get the gist. This is what he said to Fauci earlier.
It's not about much more your regrets, but I have one. And that is early on that there was the theory that the virus could have emerged from the lab. And early on that became like a right-wing kinds of theory. And I thought it seemed to make sense. Now, there was a really advanced lab that was close by, and then you have this unknown virus out. So, but that became a very partisan thing. And now it seems now it's more and more emerging theory that would have come from the lab. Now, I think that the next time our nation's facing something like this, we are not become, as I might have been, blinded by the partisan idea that
And he says straight up, like, I was blinded by the idea that, well, I'm a Democrat, so I gotta take their word at it. He said it obviously came from a lab, and you lied to us about it. And then he was like, he was over it. He only spoke for like a minute and a half, and he was like, I'm gonna give the remainder of my time to the next person because he didn't want to do it. Then it went over to Josh Hawley. And again, I've got my beef with Josh Hawley, but this is where he gets his bread and butter in. And I think, I don't know if he maintains what popularity he does have at these hearings, but he has been quite the fighter on the Fauci stuff. And he was frustrated with Anthony Fauci's lack of ability or willingness to answer questions. So he said, well, let's just keep it simple. Let me ask you some simple questions that surely you won't need to plead the fifth on.
You did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting...
So that one, I'll do that one next. Give me the other one from Josh Hawley. Again, this is him saying, all right, if you want to plead the fifth on everything, let's try this right here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you?
Okay, and stop it right there. This is where he gets into this part. Give me the next one, where he begins to talk about the money that he acquired, because, by the way, Anthony Fauci's now worth like $12 million, on top of the fact that he was the highest paid federal employee, making even more than the president of the United States. Wasn't enough for him. He wanted the fame and the fortune. Listen to Josh Hawley break this down.
You did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally, cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020, when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Folkers says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID. He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them. The people that you use, federal employees, so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you, and then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer, we want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it? It violated the law, didn't it? It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel.
And he does the advice of counsel, blah, 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 blah. So there was a lot. The thing about Fauci is that not only was he full of himself, but he was also trying to enrich himself. Again, the fame and the fortune. And because of that and his success at doing that, he became a version of himself that he felt was unstoppable, untouchable, if you will. And there was some of this back. I mean, this is not new. This was always an underlying issue for Fauci, apparently, because in one document dating back to 2013, or at least referencing 2013, he complained that HHS didn't let him do a CNN television interview because of, quote, pure jealousy, adding that it was because he's a, quote, rock star who was, quote, stealing their thunder. That was Anthony Fauci. Among all the other things, all the lies, the idea, the proof that he knew that people were still getting infected after getting vaccinated and then going out and saying the opposite. Even in 2021, he wrote in his diary that he was nervous about getting infected at a fancy event that required proof of vaccination to get in. He says, I'm well aware that many people who are vaccinated are still getting infected. It was almost, I don't know if it was this idea of, I've got these lies that I'm having to keep to myself and I need to let them out somehow, so I'm going to put them in my diary on government servers. Or what? You see stories where criminals, they commit crimes and then they end up doing things that in retrospect, you're like, why would you do that? That's going to get you caught. But the reason that they do that is because they become overconfident. And Fauci had become that person. He became overconfident and felt like he was untouchable. And that's why he came out and talked about the wet market and all that, while simultaneously in his own diary stating otherwise. Here, right here, this is the many times Fauci went on TV and talked about the wet market deal and that being the source of COVID, while knowing that it in fact did not come from a wet market and it came from a Wuhan lab that he himself was funding.
Take a really good look at the animal-human interface and the fact that animals from the wild are being brought into wet markets. You have animals that come out of the wild that are sold at these open, what they call them, wet markets. Wet markets, where you bring animals in from the wild who have these viruses. The wet markets in Asia, where people bring animals from the forest into market. There are wet markets in Wuhan that are ample opportunity for a virus to jump from an animal. The origin was from a bat to an intermediate host to a human, very likely in a wet market. And those animals should not have been in the Wuhan market. They knew that those animals should not have been in the market, and they immediately cleaned out the market, put restrictions on the kinds of animals that come into these wet markets. I think they should shut down those things right away. I mean, it boggles my mind.
That was actually the first line of business owners that were attacked by Fauci was the poor Chinese people that ran wet markets. And little did we know, he was not only going to try to shut down the wet markets, but shut down businesses all across the U.S. No wild animals that come from the wet markets. It's obvious that's what happened. And he knew the entire time that he was lying to himself and he was lying to the American people. John Bird, why are you engaging with Ken the Liberal on the text line? You know better than to feed the wild animals.
Well, you just kill them with kindness. The meaner they are, the kinder you are. It drives them crazy.
Oh, man. I just saw that. I'm like, John Bird, stop.
Yeah, you got to kill them with kindness, man.
Don't
It's the
feed
one thing they can't stand.
Don't feed the tigers. They're, of course, Ken wouldn't be a tiger. Ken would be more like
A furry, a kitty cat.
Yeah, a kitty cat, a furry. Yeah. Yeah, he's always talking trash. There's several of them that talk trash on the text line. That's just par for the course. Richard, the cop's on the line. Richard, what's up?
So, talking about COVID stories, Andrew, that happened to us. I was working for the state of Oklahoma back during COVID, and I was doing Uber and Lyft as a part-time gig up there. And you remember, I don't know if you were Ubering during that time or not, but both places had policies that if you had a rider in the car, you had to have a mask on.
Yeah.
And if the rider reported you without the mask, you'd get in trouble for it.
Mm-hmm.
And Uber would send us 5 packs of masks about every month for free.
Yep.
Mail it to your house.
I remember
I
that.
still got one at the house in a drawer I found the other day.
And as a matter of fact, I will say that business was pretty good back then because while there's a large population of liberal drivers, many of them were terrified to get out and drive. They'd rather sit at home and collect the unemployment, which you were eligible for as a sole proprietor. And if it was for you like it was for me, I mean, I had my pick of the litter on rides. Like you could just sit there and decline them till you got one you wanted.
Buddy, I couldn't take the unemployment. I had a full-time job with the state, too. But I'm telling you, the first night they reopened them bars, ooh, the money.
Yeah. Yeah,
it
there was
was
a lot of
unreal. Because back then I was having to work night shifts. But, yeah, I've still got a pack of those masks at home, Andrew.
Yeah, I probably do somewhere, too.
It just, you'd make $2,000 in a weekend when they first opened the bars back up.
Yeah. What I would do is I would just sit there and decline rides until I got one that was 45 minutes or longer. I would only take long rides. I wasn't going to run around and, spend $5 in gas to make $3.
Yep. And when they first closed everything down for COVID, the gas prices dropped ridiculously low that first week or two. And I'm just going to tell you, they can prosecute him on state crimes, each individual state, even though he's got a federal pardon. Mm-hmm. And somebody needs to have the guts to step up and start it.
Well, they need to start dragging in Biden staffers and get them to answer under oath whether or not Biden actually signed that pardon or approved that pardon for an auto pen, because something tells me that the only one Joe Biden signed or approved of was the Hunter Biden pardon. I think the rest were done by people behind the scenes, and probably Fauci himself calling the White House and saying, hey, y'all go ahead and auto pen me a pardon for the past 10 years.
I wish Trump would give me one from the date of birth to the date of my death.
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
But y'all have a good one. I got to drop somebody off, man.
All right. See you, Cole. Yeah. Fauci, even speaking of the bars being closed, Fauci bragged in his diary about forcing California and New York to shut down businesses and restaurants and schools after years of claiming that he had nothing to do with it. I'll give you that on the other side. 205-545-9950. That's 545-9950. It's the line. Talk 99.5. Back after this. Mandu! Yeah! Nothing gets me fired up quite like Rage Against the Machine, and nothing gets me fired up quite like Mandu. And I got a surprise for you on the Mandu front. They are offering a 15% discount. I don't think we've ever done this before. 15% discount for all educators, students, and associated educational staff. So if you work at a school or do things related to school, or you're a student yourself, Mandu wants to make 15% off available between now and the end of September. So with back to school time coming, you can get yourself in shape, looking better, feeling better than you ever have before. 15% off. Educators, coaches, school faculty, students, start your year off with Mandu. The pulse of fitness is what we call it. So make sure you take advantage of that if you fall in that category. But the big thing is, no matter if you got 15% off or not, this is so worth it. And at the very least, you owe it to yourself to go try your first session for free. There's no strings attached. You're not obligated to do anything after the first session. I just want you to try it yourself. Simple as that. Go to mandu.com, click that button that says claim your free session, pick a time, pick a day, pick a studio, and then go get it. Get after it, man. You got a personal trainer, 15-minute workout, dude. Come on. I'll be there today. I got to work out today, man. I am a believer in Mandu. And I've really started concentrating on my cardio again. So stuff I do outside of Mandu. And I've been dropping weight, drinking my water, staying hydrated. And if it wasn't for Mandu, I wouldn't be able to get that progress that I'm getting. It's such a motivator, man. I can't stress it enough. So here's the website. I don't care who you are, man, woman, 18, 80 years old, doesn't matter. Mandu.com, MANDUU.com. That's MANDUU.com. And click that button that says claim your free session. 3 locations: Homewood, Huntsville, Tuscaloosa. Whatever's convenient for you. You can mix and match. If you work out of town, if you work in Tuscaloosa but you live in Birmingham, you can go to any of them. However you want to do it, just for you. Mandu.com, MANDUU.com. Let me get Rick out in McCullough. Rick, what's up?
The system is broken. How does an unelected, appointed, bureaucratic person gain more power and wealth than the President of the United States? Where did that power come from? The system's broken.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right, Rick. I appreciate it. It's a good point, too, because Anthony Fauci was voted for by no one. Anthony Fauci has never received one single vote during an election cycle. Not one. Yet he had tremendous power over your life. It also, and if there's ever a bright side to Anthony Fauci, it is awakening the American people to how dangerous it is to give your government that level of power. It also highlights the importance of local government, state government, because in many cases, you were protected by your governors. Florida was highly protected by their governors, by their surgeon generals. Here in Alabama, Kay Ivey, who's been asleep at the wheel ever since she's been in office, just went along with what our libtard, health representative, whatever his name was it Scott? What was his name? Scott Harris. He was like, "Where are your masks? Get the vaccination." And it's like, no, dude. No. Who do you think you're talking to? So our guys didn't do us a whole lot of favors, but if you put the right people in position when the government comes with these overbearing mandates, you can protect yourself with local government. Anthony Fauci, to his credit, reminded us of that. He reminded us how easy it is to have our freedoms taken away. And granted, it birthed, and I think in some cases this is good. Maybe in some cases it's detrimental because some people take it too far. But it birthed an incredible amount of conspiracy theorists. If you think about it, like when it comes to what you would consider a conspiracy theorist or people that think outside the box or think that, there's more to the story than what they're told, 100-fold more people have that kind of mindset than they did pre-COVID. It was almost like, for some, on a much larger scale, a 9/11 awakening. In the years after 9/11, when people started asking questions about how all that happened and why Building 7 fell and how the hijacker's passport didn't get incinerated in the plane crash, it woke people up, but not like COVID did. COVID woke a lot of people up. From the mandates, mask, vaccines, shuttering businesses, shuttering schools, shuttering churches, to the censorship. As a matter of fact, as I was stating earlier, Fauci bragged about closing schools and closing businesses. Bragged about it in his diary. Now, this comes in what the timeline of when he put this in his diary comes around the same time that Fauci was on TV saying he had absolutely nothing to do with the closures of restaurants, bars, schools, or churches.
A mistake in so many states and so many localities to see schools closed as long as they were.
I think in some case, I don't want to use the word mistake, John, because if I do, it gets taken out of the context that you're asking me the question on.
Well, did we pay too high a price?
Yeah, I would say that what we should realize and have realized that there will be deleterious collateral consequences when you do something like that. This idea that this virus doesn't afflict children is not so. It does. We've lost close to 1,500 kids so far.
But much less than the older population, obviously.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But you shouldn't discount that it does afflict children. So it isn't without consequences. If you go back, and I ask anybody to go back over the number of times that I've said we've got to do everything we can to keep the schools open, no one plays that clip. They always come back and say Fauci was responsible for closing schools. I had nothing to do.
I mean,
let's get down to the facts.
Yeah. Nothing to do with it. Yet, in his diary, which you can read for yourself, he bragged, not just mentioned, not just notated, but he bragged in his diary about forcing California and New York to shut down the schools and the businesses. Here's what it said. He wrote on March 9th, 2020, wrote that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo called seeking advice on whether to close schools in the Orthodox Jewish section of Westchester County, where cases were higher than the rest of New York City. Fauci wrote, quote, I told him yes. 6 days later, March 15th, he documented a call with New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. He said, I spoke with Bill de Blasio and convinced him based on what I was saying publicly in my conversations saying to close the New York City schools. I went on to tell him he should close the bars and restaurants in NYC. He said that he would base this on my recommendation. The same day, Fauci noted a similar conversation with Ann O'Leary, chief of staff for California Governor Gavin Newsom. He said, and said that based on my TV appearances today and yesterday, the governor has decided to close schools in California as well as the bars and restaurants. The day after that, New York City's public schools were shut down. And then a domino effect started. He then pushed the aggressive 15-day mitigation guidelines that explicitly called for closing schools where community spread existed. 15 days to slow the spread. Far from distancing himself, the diary shows him later mocking President Trump's efforts to reopen and blasting Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for moving forward, while privately complaining that Trump, quote, does not care about the safety of the children. While Fauci worked to limit reopenings in areas with any uncontrolled spread. Only after months of damage did he begin walking back the hard line, even as he continued urging delays in places like North Carolina. So, yeah. He still, years later, still lies about that. I had nothing to do with it. But I didn't tell anybody to close anything. Sure you didn't, bud. Sure you didn't. And no wonder he's pleading the fifth on Capitol Hill. With everything that's out there now, you would get railroaded. You would, for the first sentence that comes out of your mouth would have to be perjury. And boy, it would have been nice to get a little bit of perjury sprinkled on Anthony Fauci today. But we didn't get it. But not all hope is lost. We still have intentions of holding Fauci accountable. That's a good jam right there. Side note, people are tagging me in a post about a new company. Blah, 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 blah. Use your words. A new disposal company for the trash in Leeds. They're switching the companies again. I'd like to know like why this happens so often. Does it happen in other towns? Do you notice it happening to you, Bird? Or do you have trash
It happened
pickup?
to me a couple of years ago, but it's been the same since then.
But in Leeds, they're like constantly doing it. They're just constantly changing the company.
It's a nightmare.
It is.
I know we had to go several weeks just, going to random dumpsters and throwing our trash in.
And so now they're switching to 121 Disposal Company is the name of it. They say it's a family-owned company, believe in great service, treating customers like family, look forward to earning your trust. I mean, best way to earn our trust is to, like, make sure, like, my can's still there. And as long as you can make sure that I didn't even notice my can got switched out and then you pick it up on the same day, then we good. But who knows if, do the days change on when they pick up the trash or what? I guess I'm going to have to call them and ask questions.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have
Such a headache.
And, no offense, but I don't know how great of a company with that name like that. I don't know.
It is a weird name.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, best of luck to them.
Hope it's not Somalis. Somalians are running it.
It's a Leering Center trash disposal. Yeah. My trash would never get picked up at that point. Never. Hey, let me tell you about Chuck Davis, my personal attorney, Chuck Davis. When we're talking about businesses, I don't give you no bad businesses. Chuck Davis, well, he's maybe, I don't know, do you consider Chuck a business? I guess he is. He's an attorney. He's Chuck Davis Law, and he is my personal attorney. That's why I'm suggesting him to you. I wouldn't suggest you a dud attorney, and trust me, there's plenty out there. This guy is, he's great, man. He's great. He's helped me with everything I've ever needed, every step of the way. He's there. He checks on me, and just the kind of stuff that you need. When you go through stuff where you need an attorney, it's never fun. It's not a fun process. And so to know that you got somebody on your side that reminds you that they're working for you, they're fighting for you, it really takes a lot of the burden off your shoulders. So personal injury like car wreck, slip and fall, wrongful death, paperwork, probate, contracts, real estate, wills. I cannot stress enough to get the wills done. Check with your family members, your parents, your grandparents, yourself. Get the wills done. And then divorce, custody battles, the worst of the worst, man. Get with Chuck. He'll help you out. 205-823-9992. That's 823-9992. Online, ChuckDavisLaw.com. That's ChuckDavisLaw.com. No representation is made that the legal services provided are superior to the legal services provided by other lawyers. Hour number 4 is coming up. And I just got one more thing, and I'll move on from the Fauci stuff. We've been talking about it for 3 hours, but it just grinds my gears. One more point on that when we get back.